I wanted to continue on in our devotional series in the book of Proverbs, talking about various aspects of life that the Proverbs speak into, that we might live a full life. We've talked about just wisdom in general, understanding people, making friends. And as we're approaching Valentine's Day, I wanted to talk about marriage. Marriage is common. Love can be powerful, and yet our romantic relationships and our marriages can be absolutely perplexing. What do the scriptures have to say? What wisdom can we get from the Bible about marriage? And I have a full sermon on this, and we could talk about understanding who we are and our nature, made in the image of God, therefore made for community, that there are dynamics in any relationships. We could even talk about the differences, generally speaking, between men and women. Obviously, there's lots of overlap, but men and women tend to lean different ways. Lots of folks focus on that in Christian circles to talk about, well, this is the way it needs to work, the mechanics of it. And here's what I would say about that. Yes, there are lots of things in the scriptures. We can disagree about all of what's there in terms of the roles of men and women and how it should all play out. I think there are ways that are better than others. I do think our culture tends to try to eradicate the differences, the glories of being men and being women, and how they complement one another. But let's just put that aside for a second, because no matter what design we have, no matter what we think is the right plan for marriage, it doesn't mean anything if there isn't grace. That's what keeps us together and moving forward, because ultimately love is about caring for one more than you care for yourself, and laying down your life, dying to self for the good of another. It's a hard path, but this is the path of grace, a path where we must both show grace, but we have to receive it as well. If we do not show grace to each other, the marriage is an absolute misery. Proverbs 12:19. It is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. I know that kind of focuses on women, but there are lots of other passages as well that talk about the tendencies of men as well. Proverbs 15:16 through 18. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord. There at the core of it, our humility, understanding there's a power greater than yourself, and you submit yourself in humility to the Lord, that you can love other people. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it. The idea of sitting down with your spouse and just enjoying their presence, even if it's a modest meal, is better than a glorious, luxurious banquet, but hatred between you. Verse 18, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. A hot-tempered man, someone who's quick to be angry and try to dominate the situation, that's insufferable. And here we have Proverbs 10, verse 12. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Love, affection, commitment to making it work, and forgiving. That's what the scriptures are talking about. And we need to think of grace. We need to think of a merciful, loving kindness, forgiveness as the oil for our engine. You can have the best design, the best nature, the best manufacturing, the best mechanics of an engine, but if you don't have oil, that engine's going to seize up under the heat and friction. The best nature, the best mechanics won't count for anything without the oil. But with that oil, with grace, even poorly designed engines will still move that car down the road. But where do we get the energy to forgive and forgive and forgive again. Matthew 18, we hear Jesus talking about forgiveness. How often should the disciples come to Jesus, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times. And Jesus says 70 times 7. That's in Matthew 18, verse 22. And some of us are like, I just feel emptied out by that directive. If we're honest, how do I keep on forgiving? By understanding that we are recipients of God's grace and his love. Proverbs 10:12. Love covers all offenses. That's the only way marriage works. There's a folk singer, David Wilcox, who wrote about romantic love and the challenges of it, and how we have this emptiness in us, and it creates problems in our romantic relationships. And where do we find the resources to keep on loving people? He writes in his song, Breaking the Cup. So if you're tempted to rescue me, drowning in this quicksand up to my neck. He's telling the story about how he's not happy and he's wallowing in it, and his spouse wants to save him. If you're tempted to rescue me, before you grab my hand to save me, why don't you ask me if I'm finished yet? You cannot make me happy, not when there's empty inside of me. But you can pull yourself right in here with me. My misery'd love to have your company. We cannot trade empty for empty. We must go to the waterfall, for there's a break in the cup that holds love inside us all. We need to be filled. We look to each other to do it, and we fail. But you can go to the Lord who loves you and proved it by sending Jesus to live a life that we couldn't bring ourselves to live perfectly, died a death we dare not, and was raised from the dead to show his victory over sin and death. He loves you. And in so loving you, calls on you to love likewise your neighbor, but in particular your spouse, and to forgive as you have been forgiven. That's how marriage works. And when it works that way, there is a beauty in it. And I hope you can experience that this Valentine's Day. Blessings on you all.